Today, we're digging into something absolutely massive happening in the Philippine education system. This isn't just one reform, oh no, it's three huge system-wide overhauls all happening at the exact same time. And as we're about to see, this creates an almost impossible choice for the teachers right at the center of it all.
Okay, so to really get why these changes are so drastic, you have to understand this one number, 91.5%. Just let that sink in for a second. This number is the key to everything, and it represents the catastrophic state of learning before the pandemic even hit.
That's right. This number comes from a 2019 assessment, and it tells us that over 9 out of 10 fifth graders couldn't read and understand a simple text. This wasn't a problem created by school closures. This was a deep, systemic failure that's been building for years. And wow, look at this. The crisis wasn't just in reading. That 91.5% is horrifying for sure, but the numbers for math were nearly as bad, with almost 86% of kids in the lowest proficiency bands. And writing? Forget about it. Only a tiny fraction of students could write effectively. This is the why behind this enormous reform effort. So, faced with that reality, what do you do? Well, the government's response was to launch not one, not two, but 3 major reforms all at once. You can think of it like a doctor looking at a very, very sick patient and writing 3 different powerful prescriptions and telling them to take all of them at the same time. And here are those 3 prescriptions. First, you've got the MATATAG Curriculum, which completely redesigns what kids are taught. Second, there's the National Learning Recovery Plan, which is an emergency response to fix pandemic-related learning gaps. And third, a brand new law that flips the entire language of instruction on its head. Each one is trying to fix a different piece of this broken puzzle. Let's start with MATATAG. The big idea here is decongestion. As you can see, for the youngest learners, they're slashing the number of subjects from a crowded 7 or 8 down to just 5. The goal is simple. Get rid of the noise and focus like a laser on the absolute fundamentals.
And this right here, this is probably the most profound change in the whole curriculum. The old way kind of just assumed that if you taught a kid in their home language, they'd naturally learn how to read it. Well, that assumption failed spectacularly. The new way is much smarter. It separates speaking skills, which they call language, from reading and writing skills, which they call literacy. They are not the same, and they have to be taught differently.
Now for the second reform, which completely reverses the old language policy. The mandatory use of mother tongue in the early grades? Gone. It's now just a facilitator, with English and Filipino back in the driver's seat. But here's the really critical part. This creates a brand new 2-track system. Private schools now have total freedom to pick their language of instruction, while public schools are kind of in limbo, waiting for new rules.
Okay, so all of these reforms make a certain kind of sense on paper, right? But here's where we see a massive collision, right in the classroom. This is what you'd call an implementation capacity crisis. This collision creates something called implementation friction. It's a fantastic term. It's what happens when you have all these well-meaning policies, but they end up making competing, even contradictory demands on the one resource that can't be stretched, the teacher's time and energy.
I mean, just put yourself in a grade 1 teacher's shoes for a minute. You have 1 hour. What do? Do you follow the learning recovery plan and help kids catch up on stuff they missed last year? Or do you push forward with this year's brand new MATATAG curriculum? Oh, and by the way, which language are you supposed to be using now? The system basically forces teachers into an impossible choice every single day.
You see, you've got these competing imperatives. The recovery plan is screaming, catch them up. The new curriculum is demanding, teach new skills. And the new law is a logistical nightmare saying, and do it all in a different way. All of these are fighting for the same precious hour of instruction time. It's a perfect storm.
This conflict is so real and so intense that the system is already having to adapt on the fly, creating new structures just to manage the chaos. So, how is it evolving, especially for the kids who need the most support?
Well, first, we have to talk about a huge blind spot in the old system. For a long time, there was a national tool to figure out which kids were struggling with reading. But for math, nothing. There was no equivalent. This assessment asymmetry meant the system could see reading failure, but it was completely blind to math failure, which kind of helps explain that 86% number we saw earlier, doesn't it? So to fix that blind spot, they're rolling out new tools for a new era. We now have rapid assessments for both reading, the CRLA, and for math, the RMA. The whole point is to finally give teachers quick, clear data so they know exactly who needs help with what in both subjects right away. And to solve that competing imperatives problem, they've come up with a really clever structural fix: Catch-Up Fridays. It's brilliant in its simplicity. They've set aside every Friday as dedicated time for remediation. That way, catching up doesn't have to steal time from learning new things Monday through Thursday. So now you have a clear, logical pathway, which is especially important for students with disabilities. Step 1. Diagnose the specific learning gaps using the new tools. Step 2. Translate that data into clear, measurable goals in that student's education plan. And Step 3. Implement that plan using the dedicated time on Catch-Up Fridays. It connects the dots.
So we've got new tools, new policies, new curricula, a whole new world. But what does the road ahead really look like? Because we all know that a policy written down in a memo is a very, very different thing from what actually happens in a real classroom.
A policy report on all of this put it about as bluntly as you possibly can. The classroom teacher, it says, is the single point of failure for this entire reform. Everything, all these grand plans and new laws, it all rests on the shoulders of individual teachers.
And this slide right here shows you why. In just one school year, think about what we're asking a single K-3 teacher to do. They have to learn and teach a brand new curriculum. They have to master a totally new way of teaching reading. At the same time, they have to run remedial camps, and they have to figure out a new confusing language policy. It's a truly unprecedented amount of change to put on one person all at once. So, here's the bottom line. The learning crisis, it's real, and it's been bad for a long, long time. The reforms, they're ambitious, and you can see the logic behind them. But whether any of this actually works, it comes down to one thing: teacher capacity. Can we give them the time, the training, and the support they need to pull this off? The whole system has to rally around the people at the absolute center of this storm.
Which leaves us with one final big question. You've got ambitious policies on one side, and you've got dedicated teachers on the other. But what is the one resource, the single most important ingredient that will ultimately determine whether this grand experiment succeeds or fails for an entire generation of kids?